editor of interactive news at the New York Times. I run a department that's actually quite cross-functional. A part of the team are what I would call programmer journalists, and these are folks who are very technical but also have either a journalistic background or have become journalists through their work here. We do sort of what I would describe as sort of news-driven, data-driven web projects. So that could include everything from an election night to World Cup to sometimes one-off sort of interactives. It ranges the gamut. Our projects tend to be a little more complex, a little more ambitious in the sense of their scope than some of the other groups that work on multimedia projects here. There are two other desks, just so you know, that work on web-based projects. One is graphics and the other one is the multimedia team. So among the three desks, we're one of those three. The other part of my team is social media and community. So that's comments and then, of course, our social media strategy. Well, I mean, to start with, I think this sort of, we're calling it data-driven journalism, data journalism. It's become kind of a buzzword of late. But in fact, data and journalism have a very, very long history, particularly in the U.S. Journalists have been using data as a source, essentially, for decades, going back to the 1960s, actually, when the first journalists started using mainframe computers to do data analysis, to do statistical analysis, and started adapting the tools of social science to the reporting of news stories. Through the 70s and 80s, in particular, when we saw computers become smaller and smaller, the invention of desktop-sized computers, that allowed more and more journalists to do data analysis as part of reporting. I think the new thing is sort of showing your work, is the ability through the web and through other digital media to show the public and to expose all of this work to the public and give the public access to the same data that journalists are using, and in many cases provide analytical tools and the means by which the public can discover their own narrative within the data. To me, that is the sort of new thing that we're seeing now, which we've kind of labeled as data journalism. Of course. I mean, without storytelling, you have without a beginning, middle, end, without a nut graph, without some compelling reason for a reader to say, why do I care about this? You have nothing. You have no story, you have no narrative, you have no journalism. I don't know that it changes the way we tell stories necessarily. I think there are some media, not necessarily the data itself, but media that allow you to do more with large data sets in order to help tell the story. Now we are able to visualize in much better ways large data sets online and provide that visualization to readers in ways that we couldn't have even contemplated 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think more important in the question is, are all of us doing enough with the data that we acquire to tell stories? And I would say no. I would say that generally news organizations are pretty bad about that. We tend to like to get the data and just sort of publish it. And I don't think that's quite enough. I think we need to do more. I think we need to do quite a bit more, actually. My early career was in something that it is something called computer-assisted reporting. And really it's data journalism. But it's sort of data journalism before we had the term data journalism. And the whole key to computer-assisted reporting is finding sources whether they're human or data. And I would get data anywhere I could find it. So there's absolutely, we should be looking for data wherever it lies. And you've seen, for example, the Wall Street Journal do some really interesting things with Foursquare data recently, do some analysis of Foursquare data. We've used Foursquare data, not journalistically, but elsewhere in the organization. So I think you should get data anywhere you can find it. I would say data visualization is one of them. I would say just text analysis and natural language processing is a really interesting field, and particularly of interest to me because ways that we can take unstructured text, whether it's speech or documents, which is fundamental to what journalists do, and try to figure out ways of treating them more like structured data. There are all kinds of exciting technologies out there, entity extraction engines like OpenCalais that help you do that. There are all sorts of interesting tools that help you do sort of really fine-grained data mining around unstructured text. I think that's a really interesting field. And of course, big data itself, just the idea of there is more data out there than we know what to do with now, and how do you deal with these sort of meta patterns that you find in these massive data sets, and how do you draw conclusions from them? And I still think there's a lot to learn in the area of mapping. I think GIS. We've had some experience with GIS. We've done some things with it, but I think there's a lot to learn there as well. One of my other projects is a project called Document Cloud, which is a nonprofit. We set it up a few years ago to help journalists work with unstructured text or documents, which is, back when I used to be a reporter doing politics or whatever, all of my work was with documents for the most part, and less with structured data. And the tools and technologies we have at our disposal as journalists working with documents are pretty limited. So Document Cloud is an attempt to take the text of a document and enrich it with in certain ways that allow you to drill down and to do very effective sort of searching and filters on document sets, large document sets in many cases, to find that little needle in the haystack that tells you, oh, here's the story I'm looking for. One example of that is, we are built on top of OpenCalais, Document Cloud is, and OpenCalais will go through a document and try to identify people, places, organizations, telephone numbers, dates. So and we'll tag those in ways that allow you to, again, not just find those elements within a document, but actually link documents together based on those elements. So OpenCalais, in many cases, will be able to differentiate between, say, the Central Intelligence Agency or a reference to the Central Intelligence Agency. In many documents, it might just be CIA. It'll know that that's a reference to the Central Intelligence Agency, for example, and not, say, the Culinary Institute of America, which often also will be CIA. One, you shouldn't assume that the kinds of projects that we're working on don't earn money. In fact, I can tell you definitively that they do. What advertisers want, we are an advertising-driven business online. Even now, with our subscription model, advertising is as important as ever to the New York Times, the future of the New York Times. Advertisers want unique experiences online. They don't want cookie-cutter things that they can find anywhere on the web. What my team does is build unique experiences online. We'll build a fully realized election site. We'll build a site around the Oscars. We'll build websites around specific events like the Super Bowl or other events. That's what attracts large advertisers, and that's what attracts big money to the site. I mean, that's the truth. The second thing that I often will say is, yes, it's awesome to have 14 people on my team. There are many other, I'm not the only team of data journalists, I guess, in this building. There are 3 desks, really, that do most of this. It's graphics and multimedia. So all told, there's probably 25 people working on these kinds of projects. But most of the projects we do are 1-person, 2-person, 3-person projects. So what I would say is a smaller newsroom can absolutely do these projects, but they should pick their spots. It doesn't require 14 people. It requires 3. The problem is that these newsrooms aren't even willing to make that commitment to 1 person, 2 people, 3 people. Take a look at the projects that an organization like ProPublica is doing. Take a look at what the LA Times is doing. The LA Times is a very small department that does the kind of things that we do, but they pick their spots. They pick impact projects that make a difference. And they have done amazing work that I look at and go, wow, I wish we'd have done that. They can't do the quantity of work, but they are certainly capable of doing the quality of work and making an impact.